When you have a baby, you get a lot of advice. Some of it is really good, really helpful, really encouraging, and really just blesses you as a new parent. And some of it is not so great. So today I wanted to talk about some of that not so great advice that you might commonly hear as a new parent. And I want to replace it with some better advice. Now, a quick disclaimer, I know a lot of this advice is given with good intentions. People want to be helpful, people think this is helpful advice, maybe it's advice that they heard or that worked for them, but for me, I just don't think this advice is particularly helpful. So if it's worked for you, brilliant, fantastic. I just think it's something we need to be careful if you're going to share it with other people and think about how they might perceive it. And if you have given this advice to other people, this isn't a video to shame you or make you feel bad. This is just maybe to give you some things to think about the advice that you give in the future. So the first bit of advice that you hear quite a lot is just wait until ... And it's usually followed by something that people consider negative. Oh, it's good now, just wait until you have two, or just wait until they're a toddler, or just wait until they can walk. And the connotation here is that they're telling you, actually, it might be good now, but there is something bad coming in the future. And this is always, every time I've heard it, it's in some way negative or suggesting that what's to come is negative. And that's why I really don't like this bit of advice. And so often it's given when you express something good, when you say that something's going well. People feel the need to tell you about something difficult or bad that is coming in the future. And that is just so frustrating. Because instead of encouraging someone and telling them how good they're doing or celebrating the joy that they found at this moment in time, you're deciding to turn that around and point to something negative, perhaps making them more anxious about something that's coming in the future. And how does that help anybody? So for this advice, I really want to encourage us to change the ending of this. Instead of pointing to something negative or difficult that's coming in the future, why don't we share the joy of what's to come in the future? Why don't we change it to just wait until your baby smiles at you for the first time? Or just wait until they can run and give you a hug? Or just wait until they start babbling and you see how much fun that is? I find these kind of statements are so much more encouraging and make me really excited for the future of my child growing up, rather than feeling anxious or worried about some of the difficulties that might be coming too. And this isn't to say that we don't talk about the challenging and difficult things that are coming, but we don't just say, just wait until this happens. If you're going to do that, you need to actually be helping people and giving them really useful advice, not just making them anxious or worried about the future. The next bit of advice I wanted to talk about is when people say, you haven't been tired until you've had a newborn, or something along those lines. And this one was one that I heard before I was even pregnant from other people who were parents. And often it would be if someone expressed that they were tired, a parent would say, oh, you don't know what tired is until you've had a newborn. And for some people, I'm sure this is true. I'm sure when they have a newborn, that is so tiring and so hard, and just the hardest and most tiring circumstance they've ever faced. But for other people, that just isn't true. Personally, I found that when I had a newborn in those first couple of weeks, I was much less tired than I was when I was in the end stages of pregnancy. Because even though I was potentially sleeping less, I was probably sleeping better than I was when I was very pregnant and uncomfortable. And I know that I'm not the only one that's experienced that. I know other people have had that. And for me, I found the newborn stage actually a bit easier than some of the later stages, just because it was reasonably predictable. My daughter was fairly regular with when she would wake up, and even though it was quite frequently, at least I knew kind of what to expect and how long sleep I would get in between. And that did make it easier for me. That was just something that I found helped me to sleep. But also, I think there are lots of people in the world who will have experienced much more tiring, much harder life experiences than in that newborn era. So I think this can be incredibly insulting and ignorant if you don't know what situations that person has faced. So I think this is again a phrase that we need to be careful with if we're saying. The next bit of advice that you might hear quite regularly is sleep when the baby sleeps. And this advice has such good intentions, and in theory it makes total sense. You should sleep when your baby is sleeping, get that rest, get that sleep in when you can, and doing it when the baby sleeps makes sense. And I did do this for about a week while I was still in hospital. I was able to put my baby down and then go to sleep myself, and that worked brilliantly. But after about a week, and after I came home from the hospital, it just became so unpractical, because there's other things that need to be done during the day, and other things that you probably want to get done during the day, whether you want to have a shower, whether you want to cook some meals, whether you want to eat those meals. And sometimes those things are really hard to do while you have a newborn or an older baby with you. Now, of course, it is really important to get rest and to get your sleep when you can, especially in those early days when you're probably getting quite broken sleep overnight. But I think some better advice here is to really identify those things that you can do while your baby is awake, and what things need to be done when baby is asleep. And then make sure that you do the things that you can do when baby's awake, when baby is awake, so that you give yourself more time for rest and for sleep when baby does go to sleep. The next bit of advice is another one that I heard kind of before and during pregnancy, and it was when people said, you don't know what you're getting yourself into when you have kids. And this is kind of similar to the second one we talked about. And it's not necessarily wrong all the time. Maybe you don't know what to expect from parenthood. Maybe you have no idea what it's going to be like. And parenting is quite a surprise and a big learning curve when you get into it. But this advice is so unhelpful. If you're telling people that they don't know what they're getting themselves into, is that meant to scare them? Is that meant to make them anxious? What is your aim in telling them this? Instead of telling them you don't know what you're getting yourself into, why don't we tell them what they're getting themselves into? Why don't we tell them about what maybe they're to expect, all the good things, maybe some challenging things to look out for, how they can find help, give them advice, give them encouragement, offer them support. These things are so much more useful than just telling people that they don't know what they're getting themselves into. Because what are they meant to do with that information? So, what did you think about this advice? And what other bad advice have you heard as a parent? Let us know down in the comments, and we'd love to hear the things that you guys have heard. But if you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, do give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos from me and Arnold. And if you'd like to hear some of the good advice that I wish I had heard as a new mum, do check out this video right here when we talked about that. And we will see you next Saturday for a new video. Bye!